In my previous video, I provided you all with 7 basic tips that would help streamline anyone's first experience with Tactics Ogre Reborn. But in the comments of that video, and as I've been streaming the game, a lot more questions have come up that warrant answering. So let's do that. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I previously asked you to subscribe if you found my content fun, entertaining, or educational. My goal was to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year. You all made sure. I didn't just hit that, but surpassed it, reaching 2,300 subs and counting by the end of the day. I'm floored. As a small creator looking to make YouTube my full-time career, this was a gift. Maybe I'll reach the lauded landmark of 5,000 subs sooner than I ever thought. So thank you, seriously. Thank you to everyone. Number 1, pay attention to the terrain. The ability to hit your target is obviously important in pretty much any game, and in Tactics Ogre Reborn, there are a lot of factors at play that determine what your hit and dodge chances are. It's easy to forget, but where you and the enemy are standing has a big impact on your hit and your dodge chance. In fact, your units are actually far less accurate than you might expect, and they're getting a lot of help from the terrain. Take this scrub tile. It provides a bonus of 25 to melee and 30 to ranged attacks. Comparing to a swamp tile, which provides no bonus to melee and a pitiful 5 to ranged, we can start to see why this is so important. Any unit standing in a swamp tile is going to get essentially no help aiming their attack, so it's to your advantage to take the best terrain wherever possible and force the enemy into the worst terrain as well. And if you don't want to stop to check every tile all the time while you're learning, try this. Imagine how difficult it is to keep your balance while swinging a bat or a sword or even holding something heavy on flat earth. Now imagine doing the same on gravel or in a swamp. Keep that in mind as you move your units around, and you'll quickly start to notice which terrain just looks like it's going to be a problem and begin to avoid it. Number 2, watch out for the weather. Terrain isn't the only consideration for accuracy on any given map. The weather also plays a big part, so pay attention to the forecast. In general, the worse the weather, the lower your accuracy, so be ready for a slog if you get caught in the rain. It's a good time to prioritize that high-quality terrain to offset the negatives from the weather. However, getting to that terrain could be a challenge as well, as the most severe weather actually reduces your movement through difficult terrains, such as those swamp tiles that we mentioned earlier. So maneuver carefully, and pay attention if the game tells you that the weather turns. Number 3, keep the facing of your units in mind. This is the final tip that I have for accuracy and evasion in the early game. Be aware of your facing. What does that mean? Well, essentially, you always want to be facing the enemy when taking attacks, and conversely, you want to target the enemy's sides and back whenever possible. When targeting a unit from the front, they get bonuses to their evasion. This bonus is reduced when attacking from the side, and completely removed when attacking from behind. So flank the enemy whenever possible, and try to use your other units and the terrain to cover your back, also when possible. Moving on to general army composition, we have tip number 4, diversify your forces. A well-rounded army is the key to victory in almost any situation. However, there's more to a diverse fighting force than simply ensuring you have one of every class. In fact, it behooves you to have 2 or 3 of many classes so you can adapt to the battlefield and the units the enemy is fielding. This holds even more true in the early game where your class choices are very limited. Let's take a look at this underground aqueduct map. As you can see, there are only 2 or 3 single tile wide paths that you can take towards the center of the map where the battle is likely to be joined. So if you're overloaded on melee units going into this level, you'll quickly find yourself in a jam with no way to use half your army. However, by ensuring that you have a wide range of units at your disposal, you can choose to field only as many melee units as you need to hold the line, while the rest of your force can be comprised of archers, mages, and clerics to help pick off approaching enemies and support that front line. But how do you get so many units? Well, let's move on to tip number 5, recruit early and often. Early on in your campaign, you may notice your units learning skills that allow them to recruit specific races or species of enemy units. In my mind, these were provided early specifically to encourage you to try and turn the enemy to your cause and swell your ranks, a theory that is reinforced by the reoccurring use a recruit skill bonus objective. By reducing an enemy to very low HP, which is indicated by a little 10% icon above their health bar and an actively flashing red sprite, you can then attempt to recruit them. To have the best chance to do so, stand directly next to them with the relevant unit, then use the ability. The highest percent chance I've seen is 37, and the lowest I have seen when standing directly next to an enemy is 25%. But persistence, and some usage of the chariot rewind mechanic, will see you succeeding in no time. By choosing to recruit units from the field as opposed to hiring new ones at towns, you can not only ensure that your new teammate is leveled and equipped for combat, but you may also secure a unit with a unique class that you haven't seen before. But it's not just humanoids that you can recruit. Number 6, make use of beasts and dragons. Early in the game, you'll get the chance to make and recruit Beastmasters. Beastmasters, in turn, learn the ability to recruit both beast units and dragon units. And let me tell you, in Reborn, it's worth your time. Unlike many games that allow you to recruit the enemy only to nerf them once they're in your hands, Tactics Ogre gives them to you in all their glory. As early as Chapter 2, you could have a 1000 plus HP octopi or dragon with the ability to throw rocks up to 7 tiles for massive damage, or rain down damage in a huge area of effect using various special abilities. They're tanks, and they're damage dealers, and they often have utility that you can't hope to match until much later in the game. Add to this that your Beastmaster can buff them further, and you can quite literally command a force of nature. However, of course, you aren't the only one who can wield this power. Tip number 7, how to combat enemy beasts and dragons. Enemy beasts and other large units like dragons and golems can quickly throw a wrench in the most carefully laid of plans. They're just as nasty in the hands of the enemy as they are in yours, and I've seen a number of questions about how to deal with them. So here are some basics about how they work, and my apologies, this is going to be a slightly longer section, but it is what it is. All large monster units have innate counter, and can counter in melee and at range. Most large monsters have higher physical defense than magical defense, and some, such as golems, have massive physical defense. Most monster units have very powerful area of effect attacks. These AoE attacks will often also inflict status effects, and many monsters have either very high mobility, such as griffins and octopi, or they will block your mobility using rampart aura, like dragons and golems. So how do you deal with these fearsome foes? The first answer is magic. Magical attacks can't be countered. Monsters typically take more damage from magic. Magic allows you to stay away from the pack and out of AoE range, and most importantly, it allows you to apply status effects and debuffs. This is important, as it's oftentimes in your best interest to actually avoid large monsters rather than try to kill them. By putting them to sleep or paralyzing them, you can take them out of the fight or reduce their threat for long enough to push forward and try to take down the boss. If your objective is to slay all enemies, this will still allow you extra time to take out weaker targets before you focus your efforts on the big boys. There's one other major factor to fighting large monsters, and that's Dragoons. Dragoons are a class that you will start seeing 4 or 5 battles into Chapter 2. They function similarly to knights, but their only role is monster slaying. They gain abilities that massively increase the damage of their next hit against a beast or a dragon, and that ability can be upgraded to grant those bonuses to nearby allies as well. Once you can make Dragoons, do so. They'll be a valuable tool as you find bigger and scarier monsters that you wind up being forced to try and deal with. Number 8, don't be afraid to use your items. Moving on, don't allow yourself to fall into the classic RPG trap of hoarding items since you, quote, might need them later, unquote. We've all been there, ending a game of Pokemon or Final Fantasy with 99 elixirs, potions, high potions, Phoenix Downs, PP ups, ethers, all those types of things. Don't do that to yourself. These are not limited items, and you get plenty of money in Tactics Ogre Reborn, so acquiring them is not a major expense. And there are a lot of buff and debuff items as well that will ease your way forward. Being able to give all your units a single-use heal, or even multiple heals, in a battle can be a lifesaver. And being able to buff your damage in the opening turns before the battle is joined can let you hit hard early. Finally, you'll quickly find that many enemy bosses become very scary as you progress through the game, and having the ability to debuff them to keep them under control or actually make them damageable will be very valuable. Credit to commenter Rye for suggesting this tip. Thank you. Number 9, ranged attacks. More range than you might think. In Tactics Ogre, your ranged attackers, in particular archers, can actually shoot further than their range indicators would have you believe. When firing downhill, this can lead to honestly staggering increases in range. But even on flat terrain, you might have more reach than you would think. The trajectory mechanic will help you figure out these ranges as you go, and you can turn back time with the Chariot Tarot, so don't be afraid to try some trick shots and see what you can land for some sneaky damage. Thank you to commenter Vladimir Harry for the reminder on this one. And finally, number 10, quick and easy leveling. I've had a lot of people ask how they can handle a larger army, if it's worth their time to recruit more units than they can reasonably bring into any given battle. And as we've talked about, the answer is yes. It is absolutely something you should be doing, diversifying your force. And the easiest way that you can manage that larger force is to utilize the new training battles. Training battles are accessible at any castle or town, and what's important to note is that your units cannot die in training battles. Even if they go down and leave the fight, they'll still be in your party, and they will still get XP from the battle. Thus, 2 or 3 battles in should see a unit raised to viability in the early game, with XP charms being able to max them out. To really speed up this process, activate AI control for your units and turn on double speed. You'll have new units caught up in no time. And there you have it, folks. If you want to get early access to these guides, check out my Patreon. You'll be able to get these videos a day early, as well as priority for character creation, access to my scripts, and some other nice little bonuses depending on the tier. This has been 10 more tips for new players in Tactics Ogre Reborn. I hope you found it useful. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. There's going to be a whole lot of Tactics Ogre content coming for me in the near future, especially thanks to all the support that you guys have shown me, so thank you all so much. Again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Have a good night, stay safe and healthy out there, and remember, be good to each other. Bye now.